A life amid anxieties is a life of misery. This quote comes to us from Seneca, and this may be the essence of life. And what I mean by that is, I think every problem stems from worry. I mean, if you really think about it, what else is misery but worrying about the future, worrying about what you did in the past, worrying about how you're spending the present moment, whether it's you're gonna look back upon it with gratitude and being grateful for what you did, or you're gonna look back on it with disgust and wonder why you acted in such a way. Now, I believe with all of the great, wise lessons in life, they're usually pretty trite. I think they're very obvious, and that's why, wisdom is simple, but it's profoundly simple, and it's simply profound. But that's why I think it can be so hard to really take it serious, because it can be the lessons you heard so long ago, or the lessons you hear so often as you shouldn't worry so much. It's like, yeah, obviously, but we don't really take that to heart. We don't really understand the magnitude of what that means and what not worrying entails. Now, I think most of the greats talk about worrying as well. It's not a topic that has been overlooked. It is a topic that has been delved upon by the greats. Marcus Aurelius says, "Today I eliminated anxiety." But then he corrects himself. He says, "No, I didn't eliminate anxiety. I discarded it, for it is within me." And Jesus says, has worrying ever added even a second to your life? And there's many translations of that line, but that's my favorite. And I think you can go one step further and on what Jesus said and say, no, it hasn't added a single moment, but it's stolen many and has deprived us of many. We have clear evidence nowadays how unhealthy it is, or how unhealthy stress is. Now, I know stress, if you view stress in a positive light, has a different effect on you, but I don't think anyone views the stress from worrying in a positive light. It is all in a negative light. Worrying is never positive. And I think worrying too is so hard to stop, because it's one of those things that it just so often planning can just snowball into worrying, and the lines fade, and it's hard to tell when you've got out of planning and you've gotten into worrying. But I just look back upon my life and on it right now, and the only time I'm miserable or going through a hard time or things of that nature, it's because I'm worrying. It's never because the present's unbearable. As many philosophers say, an unbearable present comes with its own end. Nothing is unbearable. But these are not the things that upset us. It's the catastrophizing of the future, or the thinking that the things that we did in the past were foolish, and we worry about the consequences that they will have in the future and in the present. And we don't realize that this worrying is causing our misery. And I came to the conclusion yesterday that you cannot be at peace and be worrying at the same time. And that's pretty trite, but I mean, as I said, the wisest things ever said were trite. You cannot, and I said it before, I'll say it again. I think happiness is better described as peace, because joy is fleeting. Joy is not happiness. But peace is something that, peace and tranquility, these are things that can be everlasting in the sound mind, in the sage, in the wise man. And the wise man simply does not worry, because he simply understands that there's no benefit. Worrying, as Jesus said, doesn't add a second to your life. It doesn't help you prepare. It doesn't help you be more virtuous. It doesn't help you do anything other than be miserable and lament. And, I've been reading a lot of Seneca lately. And, he also says, everyone knows this one, but we suffer more in imagination than reality. And I think what else is suffering in imagination than worrying? And like I just said, I've been reading a lot of Seneca, and I think Seneca may be the greatest philosophical writer ever. I read Letters of a Stoic, the Penguin Classic version, and it was good. It was very good. But then I read Hardships and Happiness, the Chicago Press, or the Chicago University Press edition, and that was amazing. So good. And then I thought I was done with Seneca. I knew there was Letters in Ethics by the Chicago Press, but I thought that I thought it was the same thing as the Letters from a Stoic, so I never ended up reading it, and I went a long time. Classic slip in a hiking video. So I went a long time without reading it, and then I realized there was stuff in there that wasn't in Letters from a Stoic, and the stuff in Letters in Ethics it may be the greatest philosophical book ever put together. Every page is just full of timeless wisdom that you can't help but contemplate for hours, and it changes your life, I think. But yeah, if you were like me and you read Letters from a Stoic and you thought Letters in Ethics were the same thing, it is not. Similar letters, but the book is way bigger. It's like two times the size and way more letters. And he goes way deeper on ethics. But yeah, I think I made a video recently. I'm in the mountains, so I have some videos that I'm not able to upload yet until I get the Wi-Fi, but this is one of them. But I talk about how we know, but we do not yet understand. And I think the fact that worrying is destroying our lives is something that we know, but we do not yet understand. Because if we understood it truly, deeply, philosophically, we wouldn't worry anymore. Because why would you want to ruin your life? Why would you want to ruin your happiness, your peace, your tranquility? No one does. Nobody wants to ruin that stuff. But we do every time we worry. Like they say, you can't be like fearing or So you can't be doing something while you're in gratitude. And I think you can't be at peace while you're worrying, as I said. And this is something that I think everyone should dwell on and realize that it is doing you no good. All it is doing is making you miserable. All it is doing is ruining the present moment. And then another great quote by Marcus Aurelius is, "No longer think deeply of the hazards. You will not see them in your future memories." And this may be the greatest and the saddest part of the human existence, because we look back on times that we dragged ourselves through miserably, that we hated, that we wanted to pass, we just wanted to get through. And we look back on them and we say, that wasn't so bad. Those were the good old days. And it's because you don't see the hazards in the future. You don't see the fact that at that time and place, you were worrying about your next step in life. You were worrying about the next job you were gonna have. You were worrying about, a relationship that ended, or a relationship that you wanted to have, or, whatever. You don't see those in your future memories. You just think, oh yeah, that was a pretty good time, I was, 22 years old. I was backpacking Europe. I was hiking in the Austrian Alps, hiking hut to hut. Life was pretty good. Yeah. But then you go back to that time and place, and you're just immersed in anxiety, immersed in worry, immersed in uncertainty, immersed in doubt, immersed in criticism, thinking, why? Maybe I should just settle. Maybe I'm not good enough to go for it. Maybe I should just stop trying. Maybe I should just listen to the people who say I'm foolish, You don't think about that in the future, especially if it all works out. You say, those are the good old days. Because the journey is the best part. And you're amidst the journey. And you can say, to go back to that time and place, because it works out. You get to the place you want to be. And that's how we have to act in the present moment. Not worrying, it's not going to happen. And we must also learn to fall in love with uncertainty. Because let's just say God came to you and he said, hey, do you want to know your future? I see you over here every day. You're struggling with anxiety, you're uncertain, you're doubtful, you're this, that, and the other, and you're ruining the present. Do you want to see your future just so you can, stop worrying so much? I think if you were to say yes, you would be crazy. What would be the fun in knowing it all works out? What would be the fun in that? And then what would be the point of keeping going if it all didn't work out? If you just saw that it didn't happen how you wanted to, and this, that, and the other. You wouldn't be able to go through it cheerfully. So I think we have to fall in love with uncertainty, and due to the fact that we wouldn't even want to know the future if we could, we act as if we want to know where we're going and what's next and this, that, and the other. But we really don't. We really love the uncertainty. We really love when something happens we didn't expect and it works out good. We really love when we can look back on a time and be like, wow, on that day, I didn't even know this person. And now a year later, they're, a great friend. They're a great girlfriend, great boyfriend, great person, great mentor, great whatever. We love that stuff. And to know that on this day, you're gonna meet someone that's gonna change your life, or you're gonna do something that's gonna change your life, that would suck. That'd be horrible. It'd ruin the fun. We love uncertainty, but we don't realize it. And that's why we worry through life. And that's why we are miserable. And we aren't always worrying. And that's why we are not always miserable. But I think it's clear when we are miserable, there's a great deal of worrying going on. And for me in my life recently, it has been causing me great distress. I don't know, I might have said this in another video, but I think we humans are, problem solving creatures, and we like to make problems out of nothing sometimes, because there is no problem. We get bored of peace and we say, oh wait, there must be a problem out there, I gotta solve it. And so often there isn't a problem. Life's just peaceful and fine, but we like making them out of thin air. And my favorite one recently has been, 22 years old. I'm, technically unemployed, and I am, just in another country. I'm just hiking, on weekdays, and just, I don't know where I'm going, and that makes me worry, and that ruins moments like this. There's been days where I couldn't even enjoy this because I am immersed in anxiety. And that's why I say I am not wise. I don't know what your idea of me is if you don't know me in real life and you only know me through this channel and you actually watch a lot of my videos. But don't believe that the things I say I practice constantly. Don't believe that I never worry. Don't believe that I always practice what I preach. I worry constantly. I give in to vices constantly. I don't live up to my expectations. I struggle daily with trying to want what happens to happen. That's another reason why I love Seneca, because Seneca talks about how he's sick. He says he writes so much wise literature, and he may be just a pen and ink philosopher, but he is the best, in my opinion. At least pen and ink. Maybe not how he lived, but there's a lot of uncertainty with that, whether he helped Nero out of a feeling of someone worse would do it, or he helped Nero out of saving his own skin. It's hard to say. We'll never truly know. But I don't want to have a fake persona on here that I'm wise and I practice all the things I preach. I strive to, and I try, but often I fall short. But as Kanye says, when you aim for the stars, if you fall, you land on the clouds. So aim for the heights, and you'll probably fall, but at least you'll land on the clouds. At least you'll be striving. You'll fail striving for greatness, for excellence. There's nothing wrong with that. And as I said, just stop worrying. I think I tell myself this constantly, but yesterday you can't tell, but right, there's a beautiful view here. Spectacular. I'll put it in the thumbnail. I just sat for 5 hours looking at it and thinking about how worrying is ruining my life. I thought about things I knew but did not yet understand. And I may not yet understand them, but I think I'm closer. And I think that's what we all should do. And I think if we can overcome worry, then it's like I think so much is about subtraction and not addition. And worrying is one of those things. And I think if you can subtract worrying, you remove that, and underneath is tranquility and peace. You don't even need to strive for tranquility, for peace, for any of those things. All you have to do is subtract worrying, and it's just a byproduct. I'll leave you with that, and I wish you the best of luck in your journey of ceasing to worry.